Samar, before we start your debate, we would love to know you a little bit better. What are your hobbies? Which class you're in? Whatever you would really want to tell us about yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Samar Chopra of grade 10th of Delhi Public School, Jalandhar. I believe that I am an explorer and an observer. I am a humble storyteller and stand-up comedian from my school. I'm also a bibliophile, an art aficionado. I love playing guitar. My favorite subjects are biology and English. Music helps me to relax. I believe life is a journey of learning, and there is something every day to be happy and grateful about. Today, I am grateful to Notebook for giving students a global platform to unlock their oratorical skills. I'm also highly obliged to Miss Sika, who is a torchbearer, mentor, and chaperone for me. I would also like to thank my Wi-Fi, which is allowing me to attend this debate seamlessly without interrupting. Thank you.
Well, a glimpse of the stand-up comedian right there. Well, Samarth, if you're ready with your arguments, we will start your time now.
Whoever controls the media controls the mind. This adage is said by Jim Morrison, which aptly suggests the role and impact of media in the current status quo. In today's debate, I, Samar Chopra, will be going firmly with the motion. Privatization of media leads to sensationalism. In this day and age, media is a free bird, and there is a media explosion across the globe. Privatization of media has turned it into a business, and businesses are meant to make profits. While public news agencies like the PTI or the UNI are media, meaning medium of information, the private news houses are more of opinions than news. Unconfirmed and vague information, unruly newsrooms, tampered evidences are all the gift of privatization of media that thrives on sensationalism. That explains the elephant in the room: sensationalism, exaggeration for TRPs. Wing Commander Abhinandan, when captured by the Pakistan Army, had refused to reveal his identity to the Pakistan military on the call of duty. But on the other hand, our dear media persons had reached his house in Chennai and revealed every bit of his identity and repeatedly aired the story. That again explains sensationalism, unmindful disclosure of information. Privatization of media does lead to sensationalism. This is true because media houses prefer covering news of famous people that will have more TRPs. The tragic death of Sri Devi at 50 devastated people, and they wanted to know what happened to her. But there is a difference between reporting and making a mockery. Media houses made all possible stories on sex speculations about her death, digging her past relationships and cosmetic surgeries, only barking up the wrong tree. The news anchors forgot that while they were really chatting about what might have caused Sri Devi's death, there was a leading party leader who ran over 9 children that caused their death. But who wanted to publish that, right? That isn't entertaining enough. The news stories are sometimes so immaturely glorified. The repeated media coverage of the purchase of 5 Rafale fighter jets was so as if they had practically won a war against China with the Rafales on the news show. Further, the word breaking news is such a misnomer. In these unprecedented times, the now and then vague news of lockdown extension, unlocking, and of the vaccine, we have often been lured to listen to these breaking news, which were just repetitive or remote information. Reporters go near the site of crime or incident and have the audacity to stalk the people related to the victim or the culprit and strike a volley of questions at them. Come rain or shine, these reporters deprive these people of their right to privacy or even cause mental trauma in many. Is this not sensationalism? Is this not hunger for TRPs? It surely is. Furthermore, to assert that privatization of media leads to sensationalism is the use of heartbreaking, horrid, and violent images by being ballistic that media houses spontaneously start flashing in case of certain unfortunate incidents. The recent very first coverage of the dead actor Sushant Singh, which were later removed, added much to our agony of losing the young and vibrant man. Were we not shocked and badly upset with media's behavior then? I'm sure that finds an echo in your heart. Latest surveys on media have also revealed that many people feel more anxious and stressed than aware. With this, I stand strongly with today's topic and would like the media houses to introspect if they should be news tellers or news sellers. A penny for your thoughts. Scaremongers or caremongers? With that, I rest my case.
Well done, Samarth. At least in the department of turn of phrase, I think you nailed it at the end. Let's see how the judges are scoring you.
Thank
Not
you.
to take anything away from your arguments. I think that was very, very well argued. Meghna, have your scores. Thank you. I can see Pavani ma'am's scores coming in. I can see Charu ma'am's scores coming in as well. Meghna, is that your final score? Can I take that?
Yes, I think so. Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Pavani ma'am, the row number 9, I'll clear that score for now. We'll put that in later. Charu ma'am, is that your final score?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. Pavani ma'am, I still don't have your score in row number. Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. Sorry, jumped the gun a bit there. All right, so Samarth, if you can see the screen, after your initial 5 minutes of arguments, these are your scores up on the screen now. Well done. Some wonderful marks there. Let's see how Akshay does. Akshay, you've heard your opposition from both the bench and the school. I'll stop my share. Before we start with you, we would love to know you a little bit better.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Akshay Arun Iyer from Grade 10, Tatwa Global School, Hyderabad. On a lighter note, my name was inspired from the Bollywood actor Akshay Kumar. Just like him, I'm punctual, disciplined, and organized. I also like playing basketball, cricket, and board games. And I always win in board games. I'm a great listener and a keen observer. I would like to thank Notebook for organizing this debate. So during this lockdown, we can debate sitting at home. So, and I would also like to thank all my teachers for training me such a way that I can express my opinions. Thank you.
Wonderful, Akshay. I wonder if the similarities with the Bollywood actor, your namesake, go beyond those qualities you mentioned, but I'm not going to take you on a fight. If you're ready with your arguments, we will start your time now.
Media is one of the most important pillars in a fully functional democracy. As an active democratic country, media should be free as possible. To bring out the truth without any bias or opinion is a fundamental responsibility of media, and privatization helps in this. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Akshay, and my topic is I'm going against the topic privatization of media does not lead to sensationalism. Privatization of media provides us diversity of views, which helps in perception creation. However, people prefer channels that show the topics that they are interested in. What's in there for me is what everyone looks for. For example, if you have to make a bouquet and if you get to choose the flowers in the bouquet, people will obviously choose putting the flowers in the bouquet. So there's a variety and they get a choice in the bouquet. Now also, if there's a whole basket of tomatoes, we don't directly choose. We don't directly take tomatoes. We choose which are the good ones and select only those. Take the example of China. Due to the government controlled media, not every aspect of the story comes into light. Can you imagine that the entire generation of students, because of one dimensional truth being presented, are not aware of the incident Tiananmen Square, one of the history's most important incident? Local papers make only up to 25% of country's media outlets, but they produce almost 50% of original reporting with accuracy. And about 59% of Indians prefer local newspapers. Few private players mix their opinion for sensationalism and TRP. It does not imply that other alternative perspectives are shut down. Studies show that Google effect is changing the way we think. So the more we use Google, the less likely we are to retain what we see. So when so much information is loaded from multiple streams, the less we are going to remember. And if we cannot remember, then obviously the impact of sensationalism is reduced. Another interesting finding: in a series of 4 experiments at Harvard, the team found that people are more likely to recall a trivial fact if they think it will be erased from the computer, and forget it if they're assured it will be there. With loads of data available at a click of a button and with multiple medias, people are sure that they will get the information whenever they want. Hence, they don't take the efforts to store it. Again, which leads to the reduced impact of sensationalism. In India, with around 403 news channels bombarding 24 by 7, still, due to stringent committees, the voting in our country is carried out judiciously, and the media less impacts their voting decision. The motto of our country is Satyamev Jayate. So, whatever ways the media tries to provoke the public, the truth will always triumph. Truth is stranger than fiction. It is important that we as audience who consume news through news channels, social media, and newspaper should always ensure that we validate facts and base our decision not on emotions but on facts. I conclude that sensationalism can be easily avoided, but the perception that we develop is of key importance. Perception once created takes a lot of time to change. Thank you. Jai Hind. Over to the moderator.
Well done, Akshay. Some wonderful points there. Let's see how the judges score you. Judges, you have access to the scoring sheets. If you could put in Akshay's scores. Remember, Akshay is the last column on your right. So please put in the scores there. Meghna, I have your scores. May I take them?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I can see the scores coming in. Akshay will try and get them across to you just in a couple of minutes. Charuman, please let me know if that's your final score, then I'll take that. Avani ma'am, may I take that as your final score?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Thank you so much. Charuman, just confirming is that that's your final score?
Yeah, sir, I'll just let you know.
Sure, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Well, Akshay, if you can see the screen, these are your scores after your initial 5 minutes of arguments up on the screen now. Well done. Pranav, you're up next. I will stop my share. Before we start, Pranav, we would love to get to know you a little bit better. You seem to be very popular because other people are trying to be you. I think there's a echo or some noise in the background, Pranav.
I just turned on the audio.
All right, cool.
So my name is Pranav Reddy. I'm studying grade 10 in Tattva Global School, Hyderabad. I'm very happy to be here today to speak about the topic privatization leads to sensationalism. Before we get to that though, I would like to tell you about myself. I'm a simple person and I have very simple taste. I enjoy very few things. My favorite subjects are math and science, and I enjoy playing sports.
Wonderful, Pranav. The sportsman, if you are ready with your arguments, we will start your time now.
Today, we are going to talk about privatization of media leads to sensationalism. This is quite a relevant topic considering the blitzkrieg in the social media and TV channels. I'm going to simplify matters for everyone today. Let us look at the three important terms of our topic: privatization, media, and sensationalism. Let us see what each of them mean in the dictionary as to gain an insight on what we're talking about. Privatization means the transfer of ownership from the public into private hands. Media includes broadcasting, telecasting, publishing, and social media, which is just the internet in simple. Sensationalism is an editorial tactic by which journalists can create excitement but at the expense of accuracy. Today, I'm going to speak for the motion, which means I'm going to say that privatization leads to sensationalism. We all know sensationalism draws crowds. What does this translate into for the media? It translates into higher TRP ratings for the channels, larger circulation for publishers, and more followers for social media accounts. Advertisers flock to this media as they seek crowds and thus an opportunity to build brand value. With advertisers come the money and then come the profits. Which media house does not want this, be it private or public? Let us add a complete layer of complexity to this, the private media sector. Since the primary motive of the private sector is profits, they would want us to attract more advertisers. To be able to do that, they have to keep up on sensationalism at its peak. In other words, breaking news has to keep breaking in. And in this whole process, we have seen that the private sector ends up breaking the truth. That is the compromise that they make, and we as citizens, we pay the price. I am not willing to pay the price, and I'm yet to meet someone in my life. I know I'm just 15, we have a lot of life left, who's willing to pay for false stories. Is any one of the judges present today willing to pay for false stories? Mr. Roy, I know you would not. We should not be paying for lies, but lies float around us. And it's not because people want to lie, but their intent forces them to make more profit and to make more popularity. Okay. On the other hand, let's evaluate the options with the public sector. Public sector media is controlled by the government, like Doordarshan or All India Radio. They are not under pressure to make profits. It is their sincere duty to work with the same advertisers so they can make a small profit, which allows them to run the company itself. They care for the news. They want to deliver properly, and the bureaucrats keep changing and changing. That's why they're never controlled by one person. The operational policies can be driven based on honesty and service to the public rather than the profit. And what better way is there to win an argument than to give proof? Today, now I'm going to read some headlines from CNN yesterday. One breaking news CNN headline: Trump wants a small cut of TikTok sale to go to the US government. And another one says, ByteDance CEO believes that Trump is trying to destroy TikTok. These two headlines contrast each other, and nice try CNN. This is fake news. Either one of these is wrong. I agree that there are some weaknesses in the public sector model. For that matter, every model is fraught with risk. I think a change in intent changes our action. Let us remove profit as a motive for media. Profit can be a motive for other industries, be it textiles, transportation. India has about 40 crore people who are categorized as illiterate. 400 million people. They can be easily influenced and easily exploited. In this stage of our country's development, we need media to be the greatest domain available. And we say the media is the fourth estate of the Indian government. But we need it to be truthful. Hence, privatization should not happen, especially in media space. Public sector that is made independent with no political leaning should be the way to go. And thus, I rest my opening argument. Over to the moderator.
Well done, Pranav. You have now successfully established that you are indeed the debater, Pranav. We will now quickly go across to the score sheets. Let's see how the judges are scoring you. Meghna, have your scores? May I take them as final, or would you want to make any alterations?
No, I think they are final. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Pavni ma'am, please let me know if that's final.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I can see Charu ma'am's scores coming in. Ma'am, let me know whenever you're done with the scores.
Done, sir.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Well, Pranav, if you can see the screen, these are your scores after your initial 5 minutes of arguments up on the screen now. Well done, some good scores there. And Sanya, you're up next. You've heard 2 speeches against your point of view and 1 supporting your point of view. But before you start your arguments, we would love to know you a little bit better.
Good afternoon, everyone. A humble thank you to Notebook for giving me and the other students an opportunity like this. And my heartiest greetings to Ms. Meghna Laha, Subhayu sir, the respected educators, and my worthy listeners. I am a student of grade 12th, an avid reader and a big fan of Harry Potter. I aspire to travel the world and explore all the corners of it. Thank you.
Well, Sanya, let's see if your wizardry extends up to your words. If you're ready with your arguments, we will start your debate now.
I strongly believe that privatization of media does not lead to sensationalism. Media is a means of impacting people, not impressing them. Words fail me as I vocalize the heart-wrenching tragedy of George Floyd's brutal killing. While being arrested for passing counterfeit currency, Mr. Derek Chauvin, one of the police officers, choked him to death. This tragic happening was circulated extensively on social media, news, and other public platforms. This event was followed by a number of violent and non-violent riots all over United States with the name of #Black Lives Matter. The impact of television and news coverage forced some lawsuits to be reopened in India too. The cases of Nitish Katara, Priyadarshini Mattu, Arushi Talwar, and Ruchika Girhotra are just a few examples. Whether the media plays a constructive role or not is a moot point. But one thing holds true. If not for media's intervention and constant hammering for justice, the accused in many of these aforementioned cases would have gone unpunished or with a minimum sentence. Manu Sharma, the accused in the murder of model Jessica Lal, was convicted after the media highlighted the case. Nirbhaya's brutal rape case was extensively highlighted, and the facts of the story were told repeatedly by angry reporters all over the news channels, and that is what gave her justice. Had it not been the private media houses, stories of such injustices, inhuman behavior like Jamal Khashoggi's killing by Saudi Arabia's royalty, and heavy discrimination against various groups would never be known to us because the government media houses publish only what the government wants the people to know. Any loopholes of the system, any wrongdoings of the authorities would be kept a secret. In a communist country like China, where no private media houses exist to expose the system, the outbreak of a deadly virus was kept a well-hidden secret till it started spreading to other countries. The numbers issued by China is only 84,000 total cases and 4,600 deaths, which is far too small a number to cause a global outbreak. One theory is that the Chinese have completely buried all inconvenient information related to the disease and its fallout within the country. This is true, at least in part, as Beijing has steadfastly sidestepped calls for a scientific investigation into the origin of the virus. This simply shows how important private media houses are to reflect the reality of the nations. If we, the public, start calling original and unaltered news as sensationalized, then we have no one to trust except the government media houses, which will never bring to light the government's true picture. In the Indian context, I would like to draw your attention to how only the private media houses showed the dark sides of the government's incompetent policies. Back in March, when a nationwide lockdown was suddenly imposed all over India, the migrant workers wanted to return to their native homes but were not allowed to do so, and their depressing state in the depressing times were only shown by the private media houses when they had no work. The crux of the matter is that we cannot depend on government media houses as they are controlled by the only people that they have to expose. This is why private media houses are essential and over the years have gained our trust by being the voice of the voiceless and not some sensationalizing entity. Our independent media is the fourth pillar of democracy. Its job is to show unfiltered, unaltered news and facts. So why are we sabotaging our own democracy by terming our media sensationalized when all it does is portray the truth? Over to you, Subhayu sir.
Thank you so much, Sania. Some passionate arguments there. Let's see how the judges are scoring you. Meghna, have your scores? May I take them as final?
Please do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Pavani ma'am, I can see your scores coming in. Charu ma'am, your scores as well. Pavani ma'am, may I take that as your final score?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Charu ma'am, may I take that as your final score?
A few seconds, sir.
Sure, ma'am. Sanya, just a few more seconds of suspense. You like Harry Potter. Suspense should be pretty okay with you.
Yes, sir.
I'm done, sir.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Well, Sanya, promise it was worth the wait, because if you're looking at the screen now, these are your scores after your first 5 minutes of arguments. Very, very well done. Well, all four of you have done well. These are your scores after your first 5 minutes of initial arguments. This is when you come back for the rebuttal. We'll go in the same order. Samarth, Akshay, Pranav, and then Sanya. Remember, you're not rebutting the opposition school, you're rebutting the opposition bench, which means Samarth and Pranav, you're rebutting points put forth by Akshay and Sanya. Right? Samarth, if you're ready, can you switch on your camera? Yes, Samarth. Better unmute yourself, because
Am I audible and visible?
yes, I can see you, I can hear you. And if you're ready, your time for the rebuttal, 2 minutes, start now.
The media landscape has changed drastically. The value of journalism has eroded. May I remind my opponents that what we are seeing today is not normal. My opposition started off by mentioning how media has impacted people. But what about the undesirable practices of mixing news with views? And this has become the new normal. May I also remind my worthy opponents that when media was not privatized, journalism was a mission for fighting ills. Journalism used to work without fear or favor. There was nothing like biased or fake news. Next, the opposition constantly mentioned that private media shows the incompetencies of the government. But do we not know that the same political parties own media houses? And last but not the least, when my worthy opponent professed that private media is a storehouse of information, let me remind them that in the past, reading any one major newspaper used to give a fairly good understanding of what was happening around the country and the world. But it is not the case now. One, we will have to read a minimum of 4 to 5 major newspapers to get a complete sense of the current developments. Same is the case with news channels. With that, I rest my case.
Well done, Samarth. Judges, please put in Samarth's scores out of 5 for that wonderful rebuttal. Samarth is in the first column. Meghna, I have your score. Thank you. Charu ma'am, I have your score as well. Thank you. Pavni ma'am, this is, yeah. Thank you so much. I have all 3 scores, Samarth, but this is the problem. I, the evil moderator, will not tell you the scores right now. If you've seen the prior debates, there's not much suspense in this now, because what I will do is wait for all the rebuttals to get over, consolidate all the scores, and then present them to you. Right? Right. Now that I have Samarth's permission to do that, Akshay, you are going up next. Akshay, if you're ready, we will start your 2 minutes for rebuttal now.
Yes, sir. My friends Pranav and Samarth have provided us with ideal situations. Can we also look at the practicalities? If government could do everything for themselves, wouldn't the entire country be run by them? They would make cars, build houses, sell vegetables, and also deliver for Amazon. We would be back to the old system of kings. And old system of kings own and doles out. Private enterprise is the reason for efficient growth. Government is inefficient. Pranav also said that the country is having 35 crore illiterate people. Can we have the government invest for those people and let media be handled by private owners? We can always have laws and swift courts and judgments for the erring. The glamour is required to attract. Who doesn't want glamour? But I agree, we can't have inaccuracies and lies for glamour. Honest glamour is great to have. I don't want to be explicit with my comments on government and their honesty. With all the autonomy of police, CBI, judiciary, and every other department, specifically relating to their appointments, being made by the government, we know the biases. Will they do it explicitly or be the unseen complicit? Is for your own imagination. I guess I have made my argument and I rest my case.
Well, Akshay, like most Akshay Kumar movies, the ending has been very strong. Let's see how the judges score you. Judges, remember Akshay is the fourth column on your scoring sheets. If you could please put in his scores for that rebuttal. I have Pavani ma'am scores, I have Charu ma'am scores, and I have Meghna scores. Thank you so much. Pranav, you're up next. Pranav, could we have you back on camera and unmuted? Yep. Pranav, if you're ready with your rebuttal, we will start your time now.
Okay, as my friends Tanya and Akshay have said, sensationalism, according to them, seems like the repetition of the same news over and over again. That is wrong, I'm sorry. Sensationalism is an editorial tactic in which we use shocking and exclamatory phrases, but we lose the correct whole point. You talked about the brutal rape of Priyanka Reddy, you talked about the migrant cases, but they were telecasted. I've seen, and you talked about the Chinese coronavirus. Of course, it did not come up in the Chinese news and the Indian news. Sorry, the Chinese news, but it was shown in BBC. As for the migrant workers issue, I've seen it in DD News. As for the brutal rape of Priyanka Reddy, they played it over and over again. I won't deny that. But what they played was accurate. I agree with Akshay. Honest glamour is exactly what we need. But I think the government should be doing it rather than the private media. Because if the private media notices a decline in revenue, what will they do to increase it? They'll go for sensationalism. So people will pay attention to them rather than the people who are giving the actual truth. I'm sorry, is someone unable to hear me?
No, Pranav, you're audible, loud and clear. Go on.
And it's true that sometimes the news channels, whether they're sensationalistic or not, they show news repeated amount of time. Well, not everyone's starting to watch the news right at the beginning, right? That's why news is live after all. Everyone has to know the news, right? That is why they show it like that. But that doesn't mean it's sensationalistic. That's just a way for the viewers to know that what is happening right now will be shown for a specified period of amount of time rather than just saying it once and risking millions of people who don't know about it. As for China, it's a communist country, and North Korea is a dictator country. It's very hard for media to go out of the country when they're not even able to correctly display media and truth within the country. So I don't think they're reliable sources to say that the government should control sensationalism. Thank you very much.
Well done, Pranav, especially the timing there. Absolutely cutting it fine. Let's see how the judges score you on that rebuttal. I can see Meghna scores, I can see Charu ma'am scores, and I can now see Pavani ma'am scores. Thank you so much, judges. Well, Sania, it's your turn.
My opposition bench emphasized that private media houses use editorial tactics, exaggerate news, and sensationalize. I highly disagree to this. Private media houses work on reputation and goodwill. If they start sharing content which is only half true, then people will start boycotting their particular company, which is the exact opposite of what my opposition says to be is their aim. What makes a news outlet trustworthy is their reporting of facts that are true to the event and provide the people with correct information. My opposition bench also mentioned that media shows terror attacks and crimes which cause stress and anxiety in people. Let us face it, crimes are the reality of today's world. So if it is stressing someone out, then they should watch cartoons, not news. Sensationalism and showing fake news, which is a cheap trick, is something that no trusted and renowned media houses does. One such example would be of Barkha Dutt, an ex-NDTV reporter who showed and displayed correct facts of the Kargil conflict back in 1999. So the next time a headline or a story catches your eye, ask yourself, is it an impact of sensationalism or the ultimate truth? Thank you.
Well done, Sania. As strong in the rebuttal as you are with your arguments. Let's see how the judges are scoring you. Charu ma'am, I have your score. Thank you. Pavani ma'am, I have your score as well. And Meghna, I have your scores too. So all four of you are done with your 5 minutes of arguments and your 2 minutes of rebuttal. And ideally, this is the time when I should be showing you your scores. But I am going to extend that suspense a little bit longer because I can. This is what the media does. We sensationalize things, right? Here I am the medium. And therefore, I will make full use of that power. What I'm going to do now is tell you a little bit about Notebook. Notebook, as many of you already know, is an EdTech product. We make small, crisp videos about various topics from your school syllabus. So let's say you take any subject from any class that you're studying in, you would find a notebook video for every topic in your textbook. What we do with those videos is we offer them to schools as well as to individuals. Let's say the teacher is taking a class, whether it's online or it's offline, the teacher could start with that video. He or she shows you a 6 to 10 minute video. Now all of you know exactly what is being spoken about. And then after that, you get to do a much deeper discussion and debate around that particular topic. Now 6 months down the line, when it's time for your final exams, and if you're as studious as I was in my school days, which means you would have forgotten most of the things, which means you would quickly need some method of revising and remembering what was taught to you in class. This is when you can access the same video from your personal device, be it a smartphone or a laptop, and quickly revise the topic that was taught to you. What I will do now is play one of those notebook videos for you, a small clip of that, so that you know exactly what I'm talking about. Can we roll the video, please?
Hello students, over the next few videos, we are going to discuss how the feeling of nationalism emerged in the minds and hearts of the Indian people. Before we go into the details, let us understand the meaning of the term nationalism. Nationalism is the feeling of love, patriotism and sacrifice which we have for our motherland. This feeling of nationalism did not emerge suddenly in the hearts of the Indian people. Rather, it was certain policies of the British government that indirectly contributed to the growth of nationalism. For the Indians, the concept of India being their motherland was an abstract one. For them, motherland did not mean the whole of India. It meant the kingdom or province in which they were born. For example, a person born in Jhansi had a more immediate connection with Jhansi than with India. The most important factor that contributed to the growing feeling of nationalism was British imperialism. It made the geographical, political and administrative unification of the country possible. A centralized state structure, common laws and currency system under British rule unified India and gave its citizens a national consciousness. The introduction of Western education as method of instruction in Indian schools and English as a medium of instruction also contributed to the rise of Indian nationalism. The Indian people now had a common official language for communication instead of numerous local or regional languages. Earlier, Persian was the official language of communication used by the Mughals. The The introduction of telegraphs and railways in 1852 and 1853 also contributed to the rise of nationalism, as it brought people closer to each other and allowed people to cover long distances. The railways, joining various diverse parts of the landscape, also gave Indians a national imagination by connecting diversified geographical regions. The first railway line was laid from Bombay to Thane in 1853. Initially, the Indians were very dissatisfied when the railways were introduced. They expected separate coaches reserved for them based on their castes and religions. However, this did not happen, and they felt this was deliberately done by the British to defile their religious purity. However, as Indians started traveling together on these trains, they started interacting with each other. They soon realized that their problems may have been different, but all of them were suffering from a common evil, that of the British government. The Britishers had always portrayed Indians as barbarians and defended themselves by saying that they had colonized India to civilize its people. Soon, several scholars and religious reformers started writing articles in which they emphasized the past glory and the rich heritage of India. They wrote about the golden age of the Guptas, Mauryas, and the Mughals, emphasizing that they had a rich syncretic history, culture, and tradition which had been destroyed by the coming of the British. The Asiatic Society of Bengal and scholars such as Max Muller, Monier Williams, Henry Thomas Colebrook, Mahadev Govind Ranade, Hari Prasad Shastri, R.G. Bhandarkar, and Rajendra Lal Mitra studied and published ancient Indian literature.
That, ladies and gentlemen, was a small clip from one of the notebook videos.
Hello, students.
There are many more such videos that span across your entire curriculum. So I would urge all of you to go to the Notebook website, which is www.notebook.school, and have a look. Well, we have here with us Achin Bhattacharya. Achin is the founder and CEO of Notebook. I would now like to invite Achin to say a few words. Achin, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think great show. Pranav, Akshay, Sania, and Samarth. I was very patiently listening to all of you, and I must say that indeed impressed. So I think the importance of public speaking in today's age doesn't need any elaboration. It's a lifelong asset in any profession, any career that you choose for yourself. So what is most important is to ensure that you work on this and only be better with time. Another very important aspect at a macro level is the sense of purpose. When you step out of your school campus and step into a larger world, the society will look forward to your inputs and views on various issues, as debate, discussion, and public discourse are at the heart of any vibrant democracy. Please ensure that you never lose your sense of purpose when you debate on various issues with your fellow citizens, as your endeavor should always be to find out what is right and not who is right. Listening to my mind is a very important skill, as important as your oratory skills. Unless you are a patient listener and tolerant and flexible enough to ensure that you listen to others with an open mind, you may miss out on some very important issues and other person's perspective. I again thank all the participants, and to me, irrespective of the result, all of you are winners today for your performance, passion, logical and articulate deliberation. I congratulate each one of you. At Notebook, we are indeed extremely humbled at being able to host 0 Hour for students and Together for Education webinar for our esteemed educators and parents. Today, we have more than 10,000 videos in public domain, just like the one you saw a short while back, which are accessed by more than 1 million users. I also thank both the adjudicators, principals of both the schools, and the teachers who have helped in shaping up all the contestants. Indeed, all of us are forever indebted to our teachers for their priceless contribution to our lives. I also congratulate the proud parents, and I thank the audience for their active encouragement and support to all our young debaters. And it really makes a lot of difference. It's important to come together during this hour of pandemic and keep the spirit of our children high. I look forward to see all of you in our next session at 5 p.m. today. Thank you, take care, and goodbye. Over to you, Shubhayu.
Thank you, Achin. At the Zero Hour Debate, we are also very proud to have partnered with Save the Children. Save the Children is an NGO that is over 100 years old now. And for 100 years across the globe, they have been working on saving children from untimely deaths and from hostile situations. We have here a small message from their CEO, Ms. Bidisha Pillai, that I would like to share with all of you. Can we roll the video, please?
Save the Children was born in 1919. 100 years is not a milestone that many organizations or individuals can claim to have reached. And for us, it's been a tireless, relentless journey to ensure that every child has access to their rights. Every child has a voice. But when we look back at 100 years, because 100 is also a time to reflect, we wonder what it would be like to live in a world where children don't need to be saved. Perhaps we could live in a world where Save the Children does not need to exist. And so as we look at the future, we envision a world which is much kinder to its children. A world in which children no longer need to be protected from violence, where children are not needlessly dying before they turn 5, where every child is going to school, is learning, is playing, and is on that path towards fulfilling their full potential. As we turn 100, we pledge to work towards that future of a much kinder and brighter world for children. Every day, every hour, every minute, we will continue on that path. But we also know we can't do it alone. We want to work closely with the communities, with our partners, with the government, and most importantly, with the children themselves. They are going to be the change makers of tomorrow. Children like Onuyara, like Rahul, like Salman, like Mamta, they are the ones who are breaking gender stereotypes. They are challenging social norms, and they are changing the world and the lives of themselves and also children around them. We pledge to continue working with them, alongside them, to ensure that every child gets the right start. I'm Bidisha Pillai, and I invite you to join Save the Children in our commitment to ensure that every child gets the right start.
Well, that was a wonderful message from the team at Save the Children. What we're very proud of is the winners of the Zero Hour Debate would also be offered an internship with Save the Children, where you get to work with their fantastic team and save some more childhoods. Well, I do believe I have created enough suspense now, and I'm sure you all hate me by now. So let me just go on to the scores. These are your final scores out of 100 after your 5 minutes of initial arguments and 2 minutes of rebuttal. Samarth, you averaged 87. Akshay averaged 78. Pranav, you averaged 81. And Sania, you averaged 87. Which means on the school averages, DPS Jalandhar stand at 90 and Tatva Global School Hyderabad stand at 80. But this is where things get interesting, because the gap is only 10 points. And we have an audience poll for who has been the best debater today. The school with the best debater wins 25 additional points for having the best speaker in their team. Audience, this is where you get to play a huge role. Achin spoke about your support to the event. This is the time to support the speaker you thought was the best speaker for the day. You would see on your screen now a poll that would come up. You would have the 4 names on that poll. You would get 1 minute to cast your vote, and you can start voting now. We are waiting for 170 votes to come in, and I can see them pouring in. I don't know if you guys have voting for various positions in your school, but if you do, trust me, this is by far the most exciting way of seeing polling results.
Yes, we do have.
Oh, great, ma'am. About halfway in, we still are waiting for 19 more people to vote. Fifteen seconds to go. Last 5 seconds. If you have not voted, I think you are going to get your chance now. So these are the results on your screen, ladies and gentlemen. It was a close fight between the two schools. Pranav with 38% coming really close, but Sania with 44% of the votes. You have been chosen as the speaker of the day by the audience. Very well done. While I tabulate and show you the final scores, Meghna, can I invite you to sum up the debate, which you do so wonderfully every day?
Hello, thank you, Shubhayu. Thank you. Hello to all my young friends and debaters. A very lovely afternoon today, and would like to greet all of you on a positive note, saying that winning and losing is a different aspect. It's important to stand out fighting in defense, and that's exactly what I have seen today. There's a very popular saying, defense can be the best offense. So my thanks to all of you who participated today with such marked vigor and enthusiasm. Today's topic happens to be quite a mature one and interesting. I think sensationalism is very inherent to privatization. Very rarely have we seen real world publicity fall back on accurate facts and figures. There's media blow-ups, workarounds across precise facts, words defeating words to hide the actual meaning, and all at the cost of some vital information not being shared. However, here I would like to argue that sensationalism has not always been a part and parcel of private industry players. It's been a tool used by many to foster profit-oriented social and political goals. In an age where pleasing vulgar taste has become the norm of the day, sensationalism has positioned itself rightfully in our lives. The case of Serbia, for example, says it all, where according to a study done by Katarina Belic from Central European University, says that it has been used to not only satisfy public demand, but also by the political elite with the purpose of distracting the public from important social and political problems. So sensationalism has been an outcome of vested interest. And it depends. If these vested interests have the power to address the greater good, has a larger vision, then it could be used for that. Sensationalism is at least intended to invoke interests. With that, I would like to show you a very interesting advertisement from the past. I've seen TV advertisements trigger youngsters, including me in my teenage days, with an advertisement, Cadbury ad. Can we roll the video for this, please, Abhishek?
कुछ खास है हम सभी में, कुछ बात है हम सभी में, बात है खास है, कुछ स्वाद है, क्या स्वाद है कैडबरी स्टीयरिंग मिल्क, असली स्वाद जिंदगी का.
Thanks so much. That was on a lighter note. And that pretty much gave birth to sensationalism about 2 decades ago. So here, if it is used to foster the common good, I would say nothing like it. As long as those interests are in the interest of the public, sharing common goals and sensationalism cannot be blamed. I'm sorry. With that, I would like to thank all of you for giving me a patient hearing. My personal thanks to school principals and the audience from both schools for supporting the cause of Notebook's 0 hour debate. Thank you. Over to you, Shubhayu.
Thanks a lot, Meghna. Well, this is where even I would like to chip in a little bit because we had Meghna Laha speaking just before me, and we are talking about sensationalism. Here's a bit of trivia that I would want to leave you with. In 1912, where Meghna passed out from, the Columbia University, they started the Columbia School of Journalism. The Columbia School of Journalism was created by the philanthropic donations of this gentleman, this Hungarian origin gentleman, who was a media mogul in New York. This media mogul in New York used to publish a magazine called the New York World, which was, if I'm not too mistaken, in competition with, in the 1890s, in competition with this paper called the New York Journal. And the New York World, New York Journal fight is what gave rise to what we now refer to as yellow journalism, which consists of sensationalism, talking about personal lives of celebrities, the whole spiel of it. Incidentally, this Hungarian origin gentleman who was a media mogul in New York was called Joseph Pulitzer, after whom perhaps the most important prize in literature, the Pulitzer Prize, is named. Well, after that bit of showing off, I will now take you back to the final scores.
No, thank you, Shubham. That was really right. Thank you so much for that. I don't want to brag about my own university, but that was really good. Thank you so much.
No, it's always happy to do that. But DPS Jalandhar, these are your final scores after adding those 25 points from the audience poll. You finish at 115. Tatva Global finished with an average of 80, but I think both the teams have done exceedingly well. Having said that, the match winners today for the match number 26 in the 0-hour debates, Delhi Public School Jalandhar, very, very well done. I believe celebrations are in order. Tatva Global, nothing to worry about. I'm sure you will go from strength to strength. You debated very maturely on a very, very important and a very, evolved topic. I'm sure you will do better and better as you practice your public speaking skills. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we will now leave you until we meet you for our next debate, which is at 5 p.m. today. I hope to see all of you then. Until then, take care and goodbye.
Thank you.